It was a warm afternoon when the guards at the prison brought in a new inmate. His name was Michael. He wasn't like the other prisoners we had seen. Michael's eyes had a strange, quiet intensity. Most prisoners looked down or avoided eye contact. But not Michael. He looked straight at you, as though he was studying you. His calmness was unsettling. But it wasn't just that. There was something about him that made the air feel thicker, almost charged. At first, we thought it was just another prisoner, someone who would end up lost in the system like the rest of us. But from the moment he walked in, something was different. The way the guards looked at him, the way the other prisoners stepped aside, it all felt off. It wasn't long before we saw the first sign of Michael's strange powers. It happened during a routine prison fight, something that happens often between the prisoners. One of the bigger men, Johnson, had been picking on the smaller ones again. Johnson was a notorious bully in the yard, but no one ever challenged him. But Michael, he was different. I was standing off to the side, watching as Johnson grabbed the young man by the collar and started pushing him around. Everyone was waiting for someone to step in, but no one dared. But Michael wasn't just standing by. He walked up to Johnson, calmly, without saying a word. And then something happened that I will never forget. Johnson, without warning, fell to the ground, clutching his throat as if he couldn't breathe. There was no punch, no attack, just Michael's steady presence. Within seconds, Johnson was gasping for air, his face turning red, and the guards were rushing to pull him away. The whole yard went silent. I looked around, but no one else seemed to have seen what I saw. The guards thought it was just a random incident, but I knew. Michael had done something. The air had changed. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this man wasn't just a prisoner like the rest of us. The next day, I saw one of the guards talking to Michael in a corner of the yard. The conversation seemed private, but I could tell it was serious. Michael's calm demeanor made the guard nervous. The guard looked back at the other prisoners, checking if anyone was watching before he leaned in and whispered something to Michael. I didn't hear what was said, but whatever it was, it made Michael's expression change for just a moment. His eyes narrowed, and I swear I saw a flicker of anger behind them. But then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by the same calm face. Michael nodded, and the guard walked away, looking a little shaken. From that moment, I started to wonder, what was Michael really in prison for? The days passed, and Michael kept to himself. He didn't talk much, but every now and then, I'd catch glimpses of something strange. Once, I saw him sit quietly in the corner of the prison yard. No one was near him. But a few seconds later, I noticed that the dirt in front of him was swirling, moving in small patterns, as if something invisible was causing it. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and when I looked again, it was gone. No one else seemed to notice, but I did. At night, I heard whispers from the other prisoners. They said Michael had strange powers, that he could do things no one understood. But they were just rumors, right? I wanted to believe that it was all just my imagination. But deep down, I knew that something was wrong. One evening, a group of prisoners gathered in the corner of the yard, whispering about an escape plan. They had been planning it for months, and now it seemed that they were getting close. But then, they brought Michael into the conversation. They needed him, his abilities, to make the plan work. I overheard one of the men, Tomi, explaining how Michael could help them break out. He has the power to control things, Tomi said in a low voice. He can move things without touching them. Imagine what he could do to the walls, the gates. He could help us get out. At first, I thought it was just talk. People always got ideas like this, especially in prison. But the more I listened, the more I realized they weren't joking. They believed Michael could do it. On the night of the planned escape, things started to feel different. I had been in the prison for years, and I knew when something was about to happen. The guards were on edge. The lights flickered as if they were fighting to stay on, and the air was thick with tension. I watched as Michael and the other men sneaked towards the back gate. They didn't make a sound. It was as if they were walking through the shadows. I stayed hidden, waiting to see what would happen. Then, just as they reached the gate, Michael raised his hand, and the gate rattled. It started to move, slowly at first, as if something was pulling it open from the inside. The guards were confused. They ran to the gate, but by the time they got there, the lock was already broken. The door opened by itself, and the prisoners rushed through. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. Michael wasn't just a prisoner. He was something far more dangerous. The alarm went off soon after the escape, and the prison went into lockdown. The guards were running everywhere, trying to contain the chaos. But Michael and the others were already out of sight. I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. I heard footsteps behind me and quickly turned around. One of the guards, breathless and wild-eyed, was staring at me. "What did you see?" he demanded, grabbing me by the arm. "Did you see anything?" I wanted to tell him the truth, but I was too scared. I had seen Michael do things that no one should be able to do. I knew that if I told the guards, they would never believe me. I didn't see anything. I lied. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't over. Michael was out there, and now he had the power to do anything. For the next few days, the prison was in a state of chaos. The guards were on high alert, searching every inch of the compound, and the nearby area was combed by the police. But no one could find Michael. The prisoners who had escaped with him were caught, but he remained elusive. I could feel the tension in the air. Every time a guard passed by, their eyes darted nervously, as if they were expecting something to happen at any moment. The whispers about Michael's powers grew louder. Some said he could disappear into the shadows. Others claimed he could control minds. But no one really knew for sure. I spent my nights awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. What kind of person was Michael? Was he some sort of supernatural being? Or was it all just an illusion, a trick of the mind? But as the days went on, something strange began to happen. The guards started acting even stranger, more paranoid. They were jumpy, and some of them looked over their shoulders constantly. It was as though they were afraid of us. Then, a few days later, something even stranger occurred. One of the prisoners, Charles, came back from the yard looking pale and disoriented. I asked him what happened, but he just shook his head, muttering something about hearing voices in my head. "They told me to do it," he whispered, his face drained of color. I didn't understand what he meant at first, but when I looked at the guards' faces, I saw fear in their eyes. Something was happening, something we couldn't see. It was as if Michael was still inside the prison, controlling everything. Charles started acting strangely, becoming more and more distant. He was no longer the man I knew. It was as though Michael's influence was reaching out, even from a distance. He wasn't just escaping, he was manipulating everyone around him. Then came the warning. One of the senior guards, Officer Davis, called a meeting for all of us. It was unusual. Meetings didn't happen often. He stood in front of the prisoners, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, his voice shaky. "Listen carefully," he said. "You all know what happened when Michael escaped. We've been searching for him for days, but nothing has turned up. There's a chance he's still inside the prison, watching us. If anyone here knows anything about where he is, you need to speak up now." Everyone was silent. Nobody wanted to be the one who spoke. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel that something was about to happen. "But remember this," Officer Davis continued, his voice low and cold. "Michael is dangerous. We have no idea what he can do. If you see him, you stay away. Don't try to confront him. If you do, You might never come back. That night, I couldn't sleep. The whispers from the other prisoners and the strange warnings from the guards kept swirling around in my mind. I had to know more about Michael. I needed to understand who he really was and what he was capable of. I walked through the dark hallways of the prison, my footsteps echoing off the stone walls. As I turned a corner, I suddenly froze. There, in the shadows, was Michael. His calm face was just visible in the dim light. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a strange pull, like an invisible force tugging at me. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I wanted to speak, but my throat felt tight. I had no idea what was happening. Was he reading my thoughts? Was he controlling me? But before I could react, Michael vanished into the shadows, leaving me standing there, trembling. The next day, I found a piece of paper in my cell. It was folded neatly, and there was something written on it. The handwriting was strange, not like anything I had seen before. It was a warning, telling me to stay out of Michael's way and to keep quiet. If I didn't, the paper said, there would be consequences. I didn't know whether to believe it, but the fact that it appeared in my cell without anyone seeing it made me uneasy. The prison felt different now, like we were all under Michael's control. Even if we didn't know it then, Michael did the impossible. He appeared in front of the prison gates. But this time, it wasn't just a simple escape. The entire gate started shaking, and the walls around it cracked. No one saw Michael do anything. He just stood there, smiling, and the gates opened by themselves. It was like watching a magic trick. But it wasn't a trick. It was real. The guards scrambled, but it was too late. The gates were wide open, and Michael had made his move. The prison was in total chaos. The gates were wide open, and Michael was standing there, surrounded by the most powerful of the prisoners. Some tried to fight him, but it was clear that no one could stop him. I stood at the back of the crowd, watching as Michael effortlessly dodged every move. There was no force, no struggle. He didn't need to fight. He was controlling everything. Michael's eyes found me again. "You should have stayed out of this," he said. His voice sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't move. The fear was paralyzing. But before he could say another word, there was a sudden explosion from the guard's side. The lights flickered, and the entire yard went into darkness. The next few moments were a blur. The prison was in total chaos. Alarms blared, and the sound of running feet echoed in every direction. It felt like the entire place was falling apart. I watched as Michael disappeared into the shadows, leaving nothing but confusion behind. The escape plan that had been set in motion had succeeded, but not in the way anyone expected. Michael was free now, and there was no telling where he would go or what he would do next. The next few days at the prison were filled with unease. Everyone spoke in hushed tones when they mentioned the prisoner with mysterious powers, the one who had forced the guard to drop his weapon. The rumors about him began to spread faster than wildfire. Even some of the most hardened criminals, those who had seen it all, started to act uneasy around him. I still couldn't understand what had happened that day. How had he made the guard fall to his knees? Was it really just his sheer willpower, or was there something more to him? I had to know more, but getting close to him wasn't easy. The other inmates were wary of him. They feared his power, and they made it clear that no one should approach him. But something in me couldn't let it go. I had to find out. One evening, as the prison lights flickered off and the inmates started settling into their cells, I saw him standing near the back of the yard, staring out into the distance. I approached him cautiously, not sure if he would even acknowledge my presence. To my surprise, he turned around and met my eyes. His gaze was intense, almost piercing, but there was no anger in his eyes, only a deep sadness. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer at first, But after a long pause, he said softly, "Sometimes, people are forced into situations where they have no choice but to take control. If I didn't do it, I would have been crushed under their rules. It's not about power. It's about survival." His words left me confused. Survival? Was that what this was all about? But he wasn't done. "Stay away from me," he added suddenly, his tone sharp. "You don't want to know too much about me. It's not safe." Before I could respond, he walked off, leaving me standing in the yard, even more puzzled than before. What was he hiding? And why was he so insistent on keeping people away from him? As the days went by, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something big was going to happen. It was like the air in the prison had thickened, and every small action seemed to carry more weight than before. It was as if the whole place was on the edge of something. Then, one evening, the inevitable happened. The prison was thrown into chaos. It started with a loud bang. We were all gathered in the common area when the noise erupted. The sound of doors slamming open and people shouting filled the air. Prisoners started running in all directions, and guards scrambled to maintain order. I saw him again, the prisoner with the mysterious powers, standing in the middle of the chaos, unaffected. His eyes were closed, and he stood perfectly still, almost like he was waiting for something. And then, as if on cue, the shouting stopped. The running ceased. Everything fell silent. It was as if the entire prison had been frozen in time. I looked around, and I saw the guards and inmates frozen in their tracks, eyes wide with confusion. The prisoner opened his eyes, and slowly, a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile of triumph. He had done it again. And then, with a wave of his hand, he slowly raised his arm, and everything returned to normal. The prison was alive with noise once more. But there was a noticeable difference. The guards, those who had been in charge, now seemed more cautious, as if they were afraid of angering him. The prisoner walked calmly away, and the tension in the air remained long after he was gone. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced with thoughts about what had happened. I tried to talk to some of the other inmates about it, but no one would say anything. They were either too afraid or simply too unsure of what they had seen to comment. The next day, I decided to observe him more closely. I wanted to figure out how he did it, how he controlled the entire prison like that. I had seen him do it before, but I couldn't wrap my mind around it. How could one person hold so much power? I followed him discreetly, watching from a distance. He moved through the prison as if he owned the place. Guards nodded to him. Inmates stepped aside. It was as if they all knew that he was different. I waited for a chance to speak to him again, but every time I tried, he seemed to slip away. He was always surrounded by this invisible force field, one that kept everyone away. But one evening, I finally caught him alone in the yard. "You can't just keep doing this," I said, my voice filled with frustration. "You can't keep using your power like this." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. "Regret I don't have a choice," he replied quietly. "If I don't use it, they'll crush me. This is the only way I can survive." I wanted to ask him more, but before I could, he turned and walked away, leaving me with even more questions than before. Things in the prison grew more tense as the days went on. There was a growing sense that something was going to change. People spoke in hushed whispers about the prisoner with the power, but there was no one who dared challenge him. One morning, the warden came into the yard. He was furious. I had never seen him so angry before. He stormed up to the prisoner with the mysterious powers, his face red with rage. "You think you can control this place? You think you can just walk around like you own everything?" the warden shouted. The prisoner didn't flinch. He stood there, calm as ever, and simply stared at the warden. "I don't want trouble," the prisoner said, his voice low but firm. I just want to be left alone. But the warden wasn't having it. He grabbed the prisoner by the arm. And that's when things went from bad to worse. The moment the warden touched him, a strange energy filled the air, and I saw the warden's face twist in agony. He screamed, releasing his grip, and staggered back, his eyes wide with terror. The prisoner didn't move a muscle. He simply watched the warden fall to the ground, clutching his chest in pain. "You've been warned," the prisoner said softly. "Stay away from me." The warden didn't respond. He couldn't. He had just learned the hard way what the prisoner was capable of. After that day, everything changed. The prison was quieter, the guards more respectful, the inmates more fearful. No one dared to confront the prisoner again. But there was still one thing that I couldn't understand. What had he done to the warden? What kind of power did he really possess? I watched him carefully from that day on, and I realized that his power wasn't just physical. It wasn't something that could be seen or touched. It was something deeper, something far more dangerous. The rumors continued to spread. But now, no one dared speak his name in fear of angering him. He had become a ghost in the prison, a figure whose name was whispered in awe and fear. As for me, I couldn't help but feel that I was being drawn into something far bigger than myself. I had been exposed to something powerful, something that would change my life forever. But would I ever fully understand it? Would I ever know the truth about the prisoner and his mysterious powers? I wasn't sure. But one thing was certain. I would never forget the day I saw him bend the prison to his will.